Hi, welcome to the Whitey Show. I'm Whitey. Let me pull you in closer so we can make out. I just got done kind of muscling through Blade 2. Wesley Snipes is in this, Chris Christopherson, Ron Pearlman, couple other recognizable faces, but not a lot that people that I knew. Um, Blade 2, I just watched the first one, call it yesterday, last night-ish, for the first time. And like I said, they're the first Blade. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It was a little better than I expected. There was a little more depth of story. The clips that I'd seen, and I'd be at a buddy's house and be watching a section of it, and there was a lot of just one man wrecking the machine, Blade's a hot knife who goes through butter, and here's a bunch of bullshit for why he can slash people up and look cool. And I got to give it credit that there was more story there. There was more going on with the villains than a typical movie like this, and I appreciated that. There was the new school of vampire is going after the old school of vampire, and there's intrigue and there's deception. And I thought that was pretty cool. I like the fact that there's the hero stuff is pretty much what you'd expect, but there's more going on with the villain stuff, and it makes for a more interesting story. But the bad guys are so damn predictable. There's no curveballs in these movies. You're getting what you know is coming. Blade 2 is the same way. Um, at the end of the first Blade movie, Chris Christopherson plays the old man. It's implied that he dies, and then he's back after about a long extended fight scene. There's similar beats, so but Blade saves him. He's back, and then he's made human again. And then you knew that was coming just because you saw him in the sequels, and you saw him in the trailer and stuff like. Well, he's clearly in the second one. He's coming back, stuff like that. Here again, similar beats, but what's happening is that you have the vampires that they form a truce with Blade because there are werewolf vampire hybrid things going on. Whatever that kind of background is, you'll see him in a second. That guy, Nomak, he's a new generation of vampire or something. And then with the way that when they bite you, you become one of them, even vampires, not just humans, but vampires. So the vampires and the in Blade and his crew, which is just Chris Christopherson, and then they got a new young guy. I've seen him in other movies, but it's a very the new young guy who's on Blade's team, his trio. He's a bad guy from his first piece of dialogue. Even if you know nothing about the movie, like he's a bad guy. And then so they have a blood team that have been training for 2 years to take out Blade. But now with this new threat, they're there to take out the new threat and work with Blade. And so you have about a half dozen people with different weapons and different aesthetic, and some are tall, some are short. And then Ron Perlman's there, and within 10 seconds, you're like, and he's a bad guy. So you know who the good guys and bad guys are. Right, but there's no surprises in this movie. The kind of one curveball, call it an atypical approach, is the Nomak character, who's the new generation of vampire, and he's been wronged by his father, who's the OG. So you have that theme again: the new generation versus the old generation, and the old generation is crusty old white dudes who are up to no good, and then the new generation is like, I don't want to be bound by you. I don't want to be subject to your rule. And so there is a little bit of interesting dynamic there. So you have Blade and his Chris Christopherson and the new guy, and then they're working with the vampires, and they're the blood team that is formed. I forget what exactly it's called. They're being double crossed by the old guard, by Nomak's father, Blomac or something. And so I thought that was interesting. I thought some of this, if you've seen Blade, you've also seen Blade 2. Did you know that? It's the same movie. Wesley Snipes is too cool for school, and he goes hot knifing through butter through all the villains. There's interesting set design. It's well directed, just like the first one. It's not a bad movie. It's just you know what's coming. The moment of characters, the moment you set eyes on the character, go bad guy, good guy, sympathetic character, and it ruins the tension. But still, there's a commendable amount of story to the story, and a lot of these, the good guy, just slices and dices his way through the bad guys. There's usually not a lot of story to it. Usually a lot of there's not a lot of character development here either. The characters are pretty thin. There's a little more there, but it's the different sides. Who's on what side, and that there's the double crosses and all this stuff. Ron Perlman, the moment he lays eyes on him, is like it's a double cross, and Ron Perlman's behind it, and the young new guy, he's with him, and that's what happens. But the Nomad character and his father and his sister, they give more weight to the villains, in this case, the vampires. And that's commendable. I like that. I like that aspect of the story. It's well directed. The one qualm I had in the last one, you see the effects there. When these films were coming out, when the first Blade came out, I want to say it came out in the late 90s, and computer graphics just weren't there. CG and CGI, it was in its infancy stage. It wasn't very good. This is a few years later, and so the technology's been updated, and or they went and got a better team, because the first one was successful. They got a better special effects team, and you can tell. The effects on this sell a lot better. By today's standards, it's still clumpy in spots. I would say clunky in spots, but by and large, much better effects. That's not big to me, but the effects, I like the story, I like the actors, but it does help. It's smoother because you can buy that should just happen. And the first one is like, ooh, is that how they took out the main bad? Oh, that looked bad. Here it's like, hey, that looks smooth. It was good. It didn't affect you in your viewing of the story at all. So, still not awesome, but smooth. It didn't interrupt the story at all. So good for them there. See, like that stuff there, I could buy that. That was cool. Fair enough. And then you can get on with the story. So by the way, if you can't see this, Blade 2 back there. And Star Fox and Nintendo 64 back here. Cool game. So, all in all, it's the same as the first one. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Wesley Snipes, he's stuck in this spot where he's got to be stoic and to a large degree emotionless and show no weakness and all stuff. It doesn't give him a lot of room to maneuver as an actor. And so the few dramatic moments he's supposed to have, I just wasn't. He doesn't emote enough emotion. So, but to his defense, he's doing what the director told him to do. This is who Blade is. He's that guy. He's got the shades. He's got the look. He's not supposed to be crying and bawling, but you got to have presence underneath the surface to make that character really work. And he didn't hit a home run here. He did his job. He did the job he was paid to do. He did. But one of the weaknesses in this movie is the team that he's supposed to be working with, the vampires, with Ron Perlman and his crew. They were weak sauce. And they, by and large, just got taken out, bickety bam. I mean, the first guy, Priest, goes down right away. The other guy gets bit. And they introduce his crew, and you think they're going to be pretty badass, but they're there to be taken out one at a time. And that's exactly what happens. I thought they lacked on their badassery. And the one guy, Chupa or something, the white dude who's got like the machine gun, he's a bit more muscular guy with the machine gun. That was the one guy who was like, I was kind of rooting for him. He's not going to be a good guy. And while he didn't turn on his team, he went after Whistler like he had a grudge. He had a grudge against Blade. And it's like, that makes sense. You guys have been enemies for years. And you're suddenly supposed to be buddies. So it made sense that he would do that. And I'm glad that he didn't turn on his own guys. There was no disloyalty there. It's just an asshole. But understandably asshole. I wish he would have gone down more harsh. That's my one qualm. Like, they were there to be taken out one at a time. And it's like, give them a little something. Give them a few moments to be a little more badass and go down in an epic way, something. And they really didn't. They really didn't. They were, they've been training for 2 years to take you out, Blade. And then they go out like a piece of paper. It's like, or they fold like a piece of paper. It's like, really? The way they set that up, they were supposed to be pretty badass, and they weren't, like, at all. But and again, you got to have a bordering on a love interest character, and so the head vampire's daughter is like, oh, Blade, arrow. But one of the problems with this film is they don't develop. There's a lot of action scenes. There's got to be. It's Blade. It's Blade 2. But they didn't really develop that too well. It was a bit there. They didn't do the worst with it. But he feels a little sympathy, perhaps bordering on a dash of romance with this girl who's the main vampire's daughter. And that worked pretty well. I thought they got more out of that than the other stuff that was going on. Ron Pearlman was a bad guy, but he was cool as hell as a bad guy. The other guy was a bit of a douche, the young hipster dude, but he did his job. He was the character he was supposed to be. So the actor came through on that. All the time he's like, yo, B. And it's like, dude, you were so good at turning on this guy, and he ended up dead. Chris Christopherson has plot armor the size of Nebraska. There's no taking him out. So if Blade likes you, if you're if you're the old man, you're solid. Everybody else is screwed. So, and that's what happened. Everybody but Blade and Chris Christopherson die. The Nomad character, I think, was the ace in the hand. I thought that character added the most. He had the most. You both hated him, but kind of saw where he was coming from. Like he wasn't born of this. He was made this way, and that's the double cross. Spoilers. It's not a movie that you need to announce spoilers for, because you know it's coming when it's coming. But you're initially told that this is like an evolution. It was an accident. It was a something, and the vampires need to stop. But then the head vampire turns out he's trying to get rid of the evolutionary weaknesses of vampires. And so he's trying to create the next generation of vampires that are immune to silver and even ultimately sunlight. And Nomak was born of that process. It's not something he chose or wants necessarily. And he's trying to fight back against that. So while he's still a villain character, you're like, man, I can see where you're coming from, though, dude. Look at the situation you're in. And at the end, he kind of takes himself out because he's sick of dealing with it. And I thought, well, that's some juice there. That's some writing there. Some good character, and the actor did a good job. This guy's the young guy douchebag. Again, not even funny. You know he's going to turn immediately. You know he's going to end up with bad guys. There's no, they didn't even try to hide that one. So yeah, the pros are, with these movies is often the case. If they're any good, it's the villains. The villains are more intriguing. The task force team turned out to be weak sauce, but the Nomad character is really the one thing that holds this movie slightly above the surface, slightly above Midland. I thought the actor did a good job. I thought the character was intriguing. He's hardly in the film, but when he's there, it's like, again, I don't like what you are, but you were born. You didn't choose this. It was forced upon you. You were put into this position by things outside of your control, and you're just trying to escape your doom, your fate of being this thing. That's understandable. So, yeah. Blade 1 and 2, the same. I'll put them they're in the same regard. I didn't hate these movies. I didn't really care for them. I wouldn't have watched them if I wasn't reviewing them. But they're better than I thought. I really thought this is going to be dog crap. Poor writing. The acting, Ron Perlman's always good at what he does. That's going to be there. But Wesley Snipes there needs to be more bubbling under the surface with this character, and there's when you go to grab it, there's nothing there. So he does what he's supposed to do to be Blade, but for this to be a better film, he needed to pull more off, and he didn't. But still, for me, it's like a C minus, where I thought it was going to be a D or an F. And with the Nomac, I'll give it a C, just a C. They're not awful, they're not good, they're not great, but they're not as bad as I thought they'd be. So good for you, movies. Good for you. Blade 1 and 2, this time Blade 2. It's the same movie, it's the same thing. Yeah, so if you've never seen them before, I just told you everything that happens. But it doesn't matter because the plot is there to hang the action scenes on. With a little story and characters there, it's also Blade can kick some serious ass, and you're gonna get what you want. So if that's your film, you're gonna get what you want. These Blade movies, credit where credit's due. So this is the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey. If you're still here, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Watch the other videos if you didn't see the other Blade review. And I'm working on just give you a moment. I'm working on this. So I've got my Xbox 360 set up to this flat screen here. And there's the Xbox 360 down here. And this is the games that are coming through my HD 60 Elgato. And then over here is going to be my AV stuff. So you see the tower of Nintendo and Super Nintendo, PS2. That's going to go into that TV. And whilst I'm cleaning up the room and behind you, like I moved the bed around and kind of get my game center more set up. And I'll be doing more movie reviews like this. So since 2014, I'm like, more movie reviews are on the way, and they finally are. And more gameplay and stuff. So you're watching the videos. I got live stream stuff. If you go on the channel, check that out. Me playing video games and movie reviews, and that's what we do here at Whitey White Guy Show. So like, subscribe, check out the other stuff. I'll see you guys on the next video. Cheers.